So we're going to move quite quickly, a lot in here, but the Council for Foreign Relations, very important organization. David Rockefeller chaired it from 1970 to 85, very important period. And this is a who's who of top influencers, presidents, leaders in the world. So very powerful, very influential. And Kissinger, of course, was well involved. But interestingly, they identified climate change back in the 50s as an opportunity, right? An opportunity. Because they knew they needed global challenges to justify to the people a global government. Otherwise, people wouldn't want it. They'd want their own local thing. So identified global health, pandemics perhaps, climate and environment fears, human resources was mainly around population bombs and overpopulation, and resources, resources for them, I would say. But the Harvard's International Seminar was then put together, and again, this was a who's who of key leaders around the world were brought. It was funded by Ford Foundation, Rockefeller, of course, and later it turned out the CIA, And this isn't actually unusual because this is a new world government, and obviously the State Department will have an interest. So these guys are not doing a solo run, they're very much engaged with the correct or the proper governmental powers. Here's a guy you might know, Klaus Schwab, very murky past from Nazi Germany. But he came over in '67 and he did a master's in business or something. And they identified him just like Kissinger had been identified. They knew this guy is interesting. And he turned out to run the World Economic Forum for nearly a half century. Kissinger was his mentor. And he did a great job for them, I think you'll agree. If you went through 2020, you'll appreciate it. So the European Economic Forum was set up in '71. Klaus Schwab led it up. And let me see, there's a few key kind of leaders who were put together for that. Barbara Ward was interesting particularly because she was always banging on about sustainable development, right? And this is back in the '70s, okay? We all know about it now. And that would become an integral part of this economic forum's kind of discussions and strategies. So keep that in mind. To the present day, we'll just jump forward for a moment. Here are the top funding partners for the World Economic Forum. Now, this is just the top funders, big money guys. There's a lot more, but you can see who's in it. Everyone from Bill and Melinda, all the Gates, the pharma companies, loads of banks. Banks are very important. But you go to their website, and I pulled this slide off alphabetically, and you can't read it, but that's all of the funding partners. And it's basically every corporation is in, and funding. So again, the people who say it's just a talk shop, the naivety is comical. So, Board of Trustees 2019, these are the top influencers of strategy, all the banks up the top, including Russia's Sberbank, and still there, and the Bank of International Settlements, the most powerful central bank in the world. And you got a load of other climate-y people and Bill and Melinda, all that kind of thing. Here's some of the trustees. We have a particular problem with this lady in Europe who is driving insanity for the past few years, but you'll recognize some of the others as well. This Turkey here, and even some of the Chinese are involved, and Lagarde. So this is the kind of people who are truly at the helm, so to speak. Here's a couple more closer to home for you guys. Yeah, big people, yeah. So we'll go back to the story though. '72, the Stockholm Conference, and this was crucial. It was the first big environmental conference, climate disaster type stuff. And they had the book Only One Earth, which got huge circulation and terrified people all over the place, all about population bombs and, catastrophes. And that's always the story. And Morris Strong turned up then. Now, he was a big oil money guy, a billionaire, and he became connected to the Rockefellers, right? So he ended up in the United Nations, and he ended up leading that conference. And of course, Rockefeller and Club of Rome, we'll get onto immediately. The Club of Rome was set up around the same time, and they had the World Problematique. And think of the Club of Rome as a kind of an ultra-wealthy, ultra-elite guys' climate disaster propaganda outfit. That was their job, and it has been ever since. But it's interesting when you scratch the surface there also. Aurelio Pecci set it up. He was the head of Fiat in Italy. And Limits to Growth was their book. Dr. Nordengerd said this was a Bible in universities. It was all about, they used some 70s computer program, and the computer program modeling predicted if we had more population, the planet would implode, that kind of stuff. They wrote a book. It was hugely popular, and it was complete nonsense. And Giovanni Agnelli funded it, but Giovanni Agnelli is best buddies with David Rockefeller. He's in Chase Manhattan Bank with him. So I think he can see now it's always the same people, and networks. So global management was required. We had global disasters, clearly. So you need a global government. That was the line. And from the Club of Rome, this book in 91, The First Global Revolution, do you notice now the parallels? Are they laughing at us with those colors, right? Communisto, fascisto. Yeah, that was their front cover. And they said, we were searching for a common enemy. What could unite the world behind us? And then we realized the threat of global warming would fit the bill. They actually said it. That'll fit the bill, right? It doesn't have to be real. And they said, well, all these dangers, you see, we're saying they're caused by the humans and all. And the real enemy then is humanity itself. This is their words. So do you see what they did just there, right? We're going to create fake crises, and we're going to tell the ants in the ant farm that we want that they're the problem. And when they buy that, we got them. And to a large extent, they've been successful. But towards the end of the talk, I'll show there's a lot of hope and a lot to play for here still. So we'll run along. Davos Manifesto, that's Davos in Switzerland, where the World Economic Forum flies all our leaders every year and makes sure their indoctrination is staying intact. And then we had Trilateral Commission, as I said, immensely powerful, and Richard Gardner was a Rockefeller insider, and Foreign Affairs was their magazine. This is in 73. He came out with the hard road to New World Order. So they're allowed to use the term, but when we say it, it's a conspiracy theory. But it's all published. They got involved, Nelson got involved with the World Future Society. They love futurists because this idiot Wagner, right, is a futurist, and he talks all this futuristic mumbo-jumbo, and these elites love to use the futuristic mumbo-jumbo and build their narratives around it, right? It's like raw material for their nonsense. So it's quite interesting to watch the psychology. And then we have Morris Strong, I mentioned, big oil man. Rockefeller's, it is said, not proven, got him into the UN in a security manager role, and within a year or two, he was head of their Environmental Commission. That was quick. But you see, power gets quick results. And here he is in 1972, and all he's banging on about is global warming, global warming. Not a scientist in the room yet. The science came later. It was invested in over decades. And he said in the newspapers, we have 10 years to stop the catastrophe. This is what he was saying. 10 years went, another 10 years, another 10 years, another 10 years, another 10 years. Am I there yet? Another few years, no catastrophe. We've gone up around 0.5 degree and everything got better, right? But they don't care when they come out with this because they know they'll never be held to account for what they say, just like Gore. Gore said all the glaciers would be gone. Oh, they got bigger. Gore doesn't care because people seem to be like goldfish and the media are all on board, so they can say what they want. Sorry for being cynical here, but you can understand. Our Common Future, 87? Hard to read. It was 87, yeah. And this is, of course, Morris Strong again and Brundtland of the Brundtland Commission. Who's behind these guys besides Rockefeller? Well, Big Oil, the Club of Rome, and Brundtland as well, Statoil, Big Oil again, Trilateral Commission, and of course, Rockefeller has funded it, and the stipulation for the funding was they must put climate change and disaster as the primary theme. They didn't want them talking about corporate pollution and real environmental issues. They don't want to talk about that. That's not interesting. Global disaster is the only thing they're interested in. So, where are we now? 92, Agenda 21, this famous conspiracy theory. It's a huge document, it's published. You should read it sometime. It's couched in the language of saving granny, but it's scary stuff. It's about control of all the world's resources, essentially. And we have Maurice Strong heading that up, and they pulled a master stroke. You know what they did? They got the leaders of around 155 countries to Rio de Janeiro. They sold them this utter sinister nonsense, and 155 leaders signed up on our behalf. They probably gave them loads of wine and caviar, and they thought it was great fun, but they signed up. Quite shocking. The Earth Charter Commission, same year. Now they have old Gorby's in, Nelson's running it, but he's bringing in Stephen, the son, because this kind of stuff it's a generational game, you know. Queen Beatrix and her father, Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands. You know his claim to fame? Anyone? No? He set up the Bilderberg Group. Yeah. So it's always the same people. All these different groups, people think they're kind of different. They're all the same. They're synonymous. Morris is in there, of course. Great Transition 2002, and here they show a broken planet. Not broken because of pollution. It's broken somehow because of overpopulation and global warming. And they show that they're going to fix it, right? So they create an imaginary problem that they're going to be needed to fix. Okay, then. Next, we have, 93 to present. This is important. Global leaders, young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. In 93, Bill Gates was one of the first into the camp, the indoctrination camp. How many do you think they got through since 93? Any guesses? How many of our leaders, and these guys always end up in senior positions, how many? 4,000 since 1993. So I think you'll begin to realize now how everything went crazy in 2020. And how did everyone go crazy together? Well, it's the 50-year preparation. And interestingly, these young global leaders in 2005, the World Economic Forum put together a big bash. And they brought them all in. And it was the 2020 initiative. Because WF told them all, in 2020, we're probably going to have a lot of problems with misinformation and, you know, conflict and maybe pandemics. Who knows? Who knows? And they got them to brainstorm and do up all what they would do, and they informed them what they should do. So it's interesting, when 2020 came and all these leaders are in position, and suddenly there's a big pandemic, they go, hey, we went through this 15 years ago. What do we say we do? Oh, yeah, misinformation, lockdown. You know, see, it's like Pavlov's dogs. They actually know, oh, this thing's going down like we talked about. So great psychology, clever boys and girls. Global Risks Report, very interesting, 2006, RAND Corporation, Military Industrial Complex, working with the WEF. So they're looking at the risks in the future, around 2020, give or take. What do they highlight? Oh, well, the big risk apparently. 2006, the big worry for the world for zero reason whatsoever would be pandemics, right? You couldn't make it up, but they did. And they also said that the biggest problem would probably be misinformation. This is back in 2006, right? And they said, you know, that the ordinary people, the little ants, might start talking, you know, and pointing out facts. They didn't say that. But they might start talking, and that will increase the spread of fear. But you see what they did just there? They absolutely knew that ordinary people talking would decrease the fear and collapse the scam. So they said the opposite, and they said, we'll have to stop the spread of fear by censoring. And that's 2006. We'll skip this one for time. Global Brains Trust. So essentially, way back they identified, as I mentioned, climate disruption, pandemics, macro-terrorism, end of oil. That was peak oil. That one seems to, they've dropped that one. Financial collapse. They knew that was an opportunity. So when the GFC came, big collapse, they jumped in fast and they set up a Global Brains Trust. 1,500 experts, 70 global councils. And basically they said that, well, now, obviously, after this crash, you need a global government.